I have no idea if this is going to work, but I want to use a shutdown solenoid for a 5.9 Cummins to turn my lockers on and off in these Unimog axles. I bought a couple of shutdown solenoids with like linkage and stuff off of Amazon, and if we retrofit these in a way that works and is practical, and then they fail, then we'll just upgrade to a Cummins branded unit. But right now, it's $40 a piece. It's a pretty low investment, and if I get everything I want, then it means that I get to just push a button on the dash in order to get the locker to turn on and off, instead of dealing with rods, which is what the original Unimogs came with, or dealing with a cable, which is something that I also don't want to deal with. I really want to get these lockers figured out so we can finish up these axles, but this locker is going to end up tying into the bracket for the battery. I need to confirm 100% that battery is in fact going to work with the position of the engine, and looking at it, we're a little bit skeptical at this point. So we need to put the engine in order to flex it out and make sure that that battery is going to work in that location, which means that we need to finish up the front clip, I guess, front end, put that on. And before we do that, I would like to upgrade the turbo. Now this turbo is a BHW turbo, and it is an upgrade for the BRM that we put in it, but a company called Rotomaster reached out to me. I went up to their facility in Canada, super rad. They took the exact same frame, the BHW frame, and they went through and they bored this out, they put a bigger wheel in it, and they have like actual, what is essentially a dyno for turbos, and they sent me the map data for the two turbos compared, and I'll put that on the screen right now, and you can see this turbo is a giant upgrade to this one, and the beauty is there's no more lag, and it's in the exact same frame. Rotomaster took the exact same frame as the factory BHW turbo, which in my opinion is the best for swaps, and they have maximized it with their equipment and technology that they have on hand. So what we're looking at in blue is the BHW turbo, and you have these little efficiency islands. So the peak efficiency island right here, 71, this is basically the way to visualize this without me doing like a 10-minute video on how to read turbo maps, is this is going to be peak efficiency at a given RPM range of the engine. So if you look at this overlaid onto the Rotomaster unit that they've built, you can see that the peak efficiency island is now way broader, which is going to make it to where under the same load and RPM range, you're going to see a much broader performance, meaning that the turbo is going to be in peak efficiency for a lot longer through a lot more RPM range, and it's going to make it feel much more powerful because it won't spike as hard, because it's going to be a flatter curve of power basically out of the turbo. Now there's other factors when it comes to making power out of an engine, but we know for sure that we are maximizing and broadening the peak efficiency range of this turbo by a ton. And the beautiful part of it is that it's the exact same frame as the BHW turbo, so we get to have our cake and eat it too. Matt and I have a boatload of work ahead of us in order to take this Zook to SEMA, but it's just one foot in front of the other, work our way through every little problem that gets in front of us, and try to have as much fun as we can while we're doing it. This is a 16-inch coilover from Locked Off-Road, and the rears are 18, so these are the longest coilovers I've put on a project, and especially when the coilovers are mount inboard, as far as they are on here, this is gonna equate to a crap load of travel. So right now, if I mount the coilover where I'd like to, which is gonna be like right here, we've probably got 2 or 3 more inches of down travel in the front, and then we're about max up travel right now in the front. So it might not look like a ton of travel, but believe me, when this side's all the way down and it tips that tire in, it's gonna look pretty wild. 16 inches, we're gonna try to take advantage of all 16 inches of travel, which is gonna give us a boatload of travel at the tire. The rear is gonna be extremely dramatic. The rear right now is not even close to being close to max travel. These are 18-inch coilovers, which means that there's 18 inches of travel. So right now, if we measure the amount of shaft showing, we're looking at 14 inches of shaft, meaning that the rear is still going to travel down 4 more inches at the coilover, meaning that at the tire, I bet that's gonna be more than a foot of more down travel. And then we still have 4 inches of shaft showing for up travel back here too. The rear is gonna flex crazy. So we're already on the timber and bump stop, but it folds like flat. So I think that we have 4 more inches of shaft showing up here, but I bet that by the time we get to that isolator and we're going through the bump, and by the time we get close to the body, I'd be willing to bet it's gonna be like 2 to 3 inches of more up travel at the coilover, which will probably equate to, 6 inches more or so of up travel on this side. So this thing is gonna get super rowdy. But the reason that I'm doing this flex test now is I just wanted to check out our up travel, figure out whereabouts the front bump stops are gonna need to land, because their clearances in the front are so much tighter than they are in the rear that there's just a lot of things that we're gonna have to keep track of. And before we start painting things and putting it in there for good, I wanted to make sure we're gonna have the clearances we want. So I've been wanting to do our front and rear lockers and this battery tray, but I had to flex it out to make sure that battery tray is gonna work, because if it does, then that's where I'm gonna use that battery tray as a mounting location for the front locker. So I think I'm gonna do right now is cut this battery tray off, because it's just tacked on there, and I'm gonna play with a couple of different dimensions and see maybe if I leave the battery on its side, whatever. I would prefer to keep the battery mounted to the axle like a competition rock crawler, if at all possible. So we'll see what happens. I'm gonna start playing with it right now.
If you watched the last episode in this build series, you saw that I was intending on using this Rally battery box from a company called Melee. And I would love to use this box, but now after flexing this out, I'm realizing that like every half an inch is gonna matter here. So we're gonna save this for a future project, and I'm just gonna run the battery box with whatever protection I can build around it. Everything I'm gonna build around it's gonna be at a 3/8, which is very heavy duty. So I'm pretty confident things will be okay. And I talked to the guys at Full Throttle Battery about this, and they said rock on. It's an AGM. They're made to be durable in tough environments. So this is going to be a really good torture test for the battery. And between you and me, I'm not really that worried. I think that everything's going to turn out just fine.
All right, start spinning. Yep. And we are locked. Locked in. Okay, now unlock. Get it like kind of going just back and forth real quick. So just like, oh, there we go, unlocked. Hell yeah.
For sure, I'm not the only one that cares about vehicle specs. I like knowing how much axles weigh and how much the vehicle weighs and horsepower, and I love knowing, wheelbases and all that other stuff. So let's get a whole bunch of work done, and then in between, I want to weigh these axles once we get them set up. I want to weigh the vehicle, and I'd love to share like the wheelbase and stuff. Once it's actually on its own suspension, it's under its own weight. Let's start to pull some measurements so you can get an idea of what this thing is like. when I bought this scale, it said max 680 pounds or 660 pounds, whatever it was. I thought for sure that would be enough for whatever I wanted to weigh in the shop. But I quickly discovered that's not the case. So I ordered a bigger scale that goes to 2,000 pounds so we can get accurate measurements of what these Unimogs weigh fully dressed with wheels and tires and everything. There's a few spots on these axles that I just couldn't get clean enough with wire wheel, so I'm using a rust converter primer from Seymour on anything that looks rusty at all, and then I'm going to coat the entire axle in some of the Seymour, I think it's called E-Coat primer, and then from there I ran out of their MRO black paint, so I'm just going to use some semi-gloss black from Rust-Oleum. Feels unbelievable to have these axles complete, and now I'm going to hand them off to Matt. He's going to get them reinstalled in the Samurai, and I'm going to get back to working on a bunch of aluminum stuff. I've been loving all this aluminum work lately, and it actually is motivating me to add more aluminum projects into future builds. So I've got to finish this tub. I got to do all this stuff that I did not want to do. I wanted to avoid having to cut the crap out of this aluminum tub and then having to build our own doghouse and having to repair the firewall and then build our own pedal assembly area to mount the TJ pedal assembly. I wanted to avoid all that because I knew that it was gonna be like a week of work to glue it all back together. But here we are. We're gluing it back together. I'm gonna trim everything for the coilovers. This is just tons and tons and tons of momentum. It feels so damn good.
If you follow me on social media, you know that I bought a Chevy Kodiak 5500 four-wheel drive, four-door, quite a few months ago now. And it's been okay. It definitely had some issues, but I got it for a song, basically. I mean, this is so much truck. And the reason I got rid of my other tow truck and I sold it to Kelly for Muddy Beards is I wanted something that I could pull a vehicle into the bed, and I wanted to be able to haul, especially to places like California, where if you're towing, you have a really slow speed limit, whereas if I had a vehicle in the bed, I could go 70 instead of 55, which is really nice. Anyway, I had a bunch of issues with it. I haven't had time to play with it. I took it to a local diesel mechanic. They diagnosed a whole bunch of issues, including a bad turbo. So I hit up my guys at Rotomaster, and they came through, man. I ordered it on a Friday. Rotomaster sent it out. It showed up on Monday. The mechanic threw it all in there, and now, like, it has never sounded quieter or had as good a throttle response. That turbo is definitely on its way out. So huge thanks to Rotomaster. I'm very lucky to know people like them in this industry. So now we're heading back home. We're gonna get as much done as we can on the Samurai. We are gonna work on this Kodiak because I want to add like a 2-foot dovetail section into the bed to make it a little easier to get vehicles in and out of the bed. And I want to be able to haul the Samurai down to SEMA in just the Kodiak and never worry about a trailer. I think that would be super cool, and it would just make hauling long distances so much easier to just deal with the footprint of your tow truck. So anyway, I gotta get back to work, and we're gonna do some long-term mods on this Kodiak in the future. So if you're interested in more about this Kodiak, don't worry, you're gonna see some stuff on the channel, because I've got some big plans to make this into a really, really cool project truck.
This is my friend Nick. Say hi, Nick.
Hello.
He's here to help. We've got power stop brakes going on all 4 corners of this bad boy. It's going to be the power stop brake booth at SEMA. What's the part number for Unimog conversion 8-lug brakes? I don't know, but they sent us some different things that we figured would work, and sure enough, these rotors are going to work perfectly. You know what? I'll put the part number on the screen for those of you that might be trying to convert to 8-lug on the Unimogs. This didn't come as a kit. I bought these Unimogs with someone who'd already bought all the stuff years ago. And I have no idea who made any of this conversion stuff, but my buddy John Martinson, who actually like put it in his lathe and welded these flanges together and stuff. Anywho, this is going to go on there. It needs to be pressed on there. Then we need to press this back into the hub. And before we do that, I should probably figure out how we're going to mount a caliper.
PowerStop Brake has been so incredibly patient with me, trying to figure out which brakes are going to go, which brakes are designed for the random conversion parts that I've found that came with these Unimog axles. And so far, we've nailed down the rotors, and they're Chevy rotors, but the Chevy calipers that are supposed to mount to these rotors do not fit these brackets. But after a little bit of research, we found that it's actually some Ford, some 1-ton Ford stuff from the 90s. Those calipers, for whatever reason, were designed to work perfectly with this kit. So now I'm going to order the right calipers, which means that we'll be able to get the right brake pads, and I'll finally have a solid brake solution for these Unimog axles.
I need accurate weight, and for that reason, I filled up our diesel tank. I tested it with air, and then I filled it up with water, and it very comfortably took 7 gallons. You could easily squeeze 8 in there. I would say the capacity is somewhere between 7 and 8. You might even be able to get close to 9 if you're willing to fill it most of the way up the filler neck, but I wouldn't ever fill it that much. So right now we're full, and meaning that's between 7 and 8 gallons somewhere. And the reason we're doing this, not only because it needs diesel, right? But I need to get some accurate corner weights so that we can so we can weigh everything, and we can order the coils for our coilovers. SEMA is right around the corner now, and we need to get a ton done in the next week so we can get this ready to get on the back of my Kodiak and send it to SEMA. So right now we're in hydraulic mode. We're trying to get as much fluid capacity in this as possible so that we can weigh this on all 4 corners and get really accurate measurements. These are a whole bunch of custom lines that I went and had made today. Holy cow, have custom lines gotten expensive. They were expensive before, but they're crazy now. And there's a reason for this. The Trail Gear kit comes with a bunch of lines, but they're all made for shorter distances. And because we have so much, we have some big packaging issues under the hood, I had to move a cooler back here. So we're gonna be using this giant cooler for our power steering cooler. And it has giant ports. And I wanted giant ports because the way fluids work, the way tubing works, I should say, and I can tell you this confidently as a plumber, the longer the distances are, the more you're gonna need to upsize the size of your line. And we have increased the distances quite a bit because we've had to spread out these different components in order to fit this build specifically. So it came with a whole bunch of -6, which would be fine on a Toyota mini truck or something everything's just in the engine bay and it's all nice and close. But in our instance, I upgraded everything to a -8, and then the return line is gonna be a -10 because low pressure, you always wanna have as big of a tube as you can for the most amount of volume, considering the fact that you have less pressure as the inlet pressure. So these are called bulkhead fittings, and I know it's so funny. The things that I took for granted is just that I learned as being a plumber, but a lot of people don't know what a bulkhead fitting is. What this is this is a fitting that's gonna go through our firewall. So we'll be able to unthread one side. We're gonna drill holes in the firewall, and this will give us a really clean connection point to go from our orbital, which is gonna be behind the dash, through the firewall with a nice, tidy connection point to get things in and out of our engine bay.
I did forget to mention that for the fuel delivery system, we're using an AirDog pump. This is for a Chevy Duramax, but it's the exact same pressure as you find in the Pump Deuce TDIs, like 8 to 10 PSI. And this not only has got like a water separator and it filters the fuel, but it also filters air that might be getting into your fuel system, which for diesels, it's a really, really important component when you're trying to wheel a diesel off-road.
I'm glad we did 8 on all this. Yeah. I'll put the end of the fitting there, and then I'll just lock it back.
Yeah, and if we do 4 1/4 inch for each one,
That should be plenty.
it should be plenty. I had my local automotive paint supply store put some orange, like I had on my Land Cruiser, into cans that I was going to use for this cage, and 3 cans did not give me full coverage. So unfortunately, I had to break out my real spray gun and mask extra stuff off and do extra cleaning. This was a late night, but at least we got full coverage, and the cage just, it turned out great.
And that, like that, we can do ourselves, you know what I mean? Yeah, that's just simple. This has been a hodgepodge of bouncing around, getting as far as you can on one aspect of the truck, getting as far as you can on another one, and then ordering stuff. And one of the things I've been bouncing around multiple times and back to is the shift linkage for the transfer case. So these are just homemade rails that we just bolted in there. Well, we TIG welded the bottom to like a homemade little tower to hold it. And then once we got them in there, I just kept heating and bending and heating and bending and heating and bending until it fit a profile we like. And then I ordered these generic front and rear shift knobs off of Amazon, and they are threaded. So I'm going to cut these bolts. We figured out what the thread pitch was. I'm going to cut these bolts. We're going to TIG them to where they're just kind of like slightly away from each other so that they don't hit each other when they're in there. And then once we get it painted and bolted, I have a generic shift boot that we're going to make work.
While Matt was installing our coils that we got from Locked Off Road, I was doing body work, unfortunately. I wanted to buy brand new doors. I wanted to buy a brand new hood. These are things that just I could not find. And the windshield frame falls into this category, except I did find one in India. It was a brand new windshield frame, and when it showed up, it had giant dents and dings. It was not even square, like straight, I mean. So you could put it on a table and it would rock back and forth. This is just this is unfortunately the reality of building older vehicles. You're going to have a harder time finding fresh parts. So I have 4 Samurai doors. I picked the best 2. I got as much of the hardware off of the other doors I'm not using. So between the 4 doors, I should have 2 functional doors after I do a bunch of body work to these doors. And then we'll get back to that windshield frame and try to figure out a way to square it, or to straighten it out, I should say, to make it flat enough that we could actually put a windshield in it and not have it look all out of whack.
Let's go a little more. Ooh, okay, we definitely made some movement.
Something.
I saw it, yeah. Oh yeah, look at that.
Much better?
Oh, way better, because now it's like actually off the table here and there.
We have 5 days until I leave for SEMA. We still have to do some work on our Kodiak to make it to where it can haul Samurai down there. There's still just miles of work, but I am so proud of how far we've made it, and we're about to make like the final visual transformation. There's gonna be lots of little touch up here and there, but we're doing the wrap right now. I've got a guy who's local named Kevin. He came down, he's gonna help me do it right here in the shop since the Samurai is not movable yet, and we're gonna make this hopefully look as good as it's supposed to in my mind.
Your side?
Yeah,
I got lots too. Okay. He wrinkled it all up and then heated it. Kevin, thanks for staying late.
No problem.
I appreciate it. It's looking wild. We didn't, this is just a nightmare to do a vinyl wrap. So what would you do? Let me know in the comments. Kevin, he said that he could bring down a section of black vinyl to go here, but because we have so much bed liner everywhere, I'm thinking, you know, like here, I mean everywhere, I'm thinking I should maybe mask it off and do some bed liner. Let me know in the comments what you would do, because I do have a couple days before I get there, and if enough of you think what I think, bed liner, then I'll do it. But if you think it looks cheesy, let me know, because I don't want it to look cheesy. But this thing is a monster. I mean, check that thing out. I'm so hyped on the clearance everywhere. Like, it's got a good stance. The color combo's looking good. I clearly have so much left to do, and I'm leaving in like 4 days or something, but we're at least like, we're on track.
If you want to see the Samurai in person, it's going to be at the Power Stop Brake booth at SEMA. And this Samurai represents so many different things that I'm passionate about, and I'm so excited to go and display it, even though it's unfinished, and it's going to be unfinished. We clearly have a ton of work to do even to get it to SEMA, but it's a roller. And you can see what my vision is now, finally. This funky JDM rock crawling mini monster truck thing. I mean, this just fully embodies everything that I'm passionate about. So I hope that you enjoyed the video. And this next one's going to be a real doozy, trying to get this thing on the back of a Kodiak and then trying to push it into place at SEMA. I hope to see you then.